David Mitchell stood at the center of the Galactic Assembly, feeling the weight of countless alien eyes on him. The Grand Hall, a marvel of interstellar architecture, was filled with representatives from hundreds of species. David's heart pounded, but his resolve was unwavering. Ambassador Threx of the Thalaxians, a towering figure with an aura of authority, addressed the assembly with a booming voice. "No species has ever managed to repair the Anaxes 9. Our finest engineers have failed. I declare it impossible." Murmurs of agreement and doubt filled the air. David cleared his throat and stepped forward. "With all due respect, Ambassador, I believe we can." A wave of silence swept through the hall. Threx's eyes narrowed, his disbelief evident. "And who are you to challenge the wisdom of the assembly, human?" David met his gaze steadily. "I'm David Mitchell, lead engineer of the human delegation. I have a team ready to take on the challenge." Threx's skepticism was palpable, but David remained steadfast. The president of the assembly, a being of luminous energy named Korvax, gestured for silence. "We have nothing to lose by letting the humans try. Proceed, Engineer Mitchell." David nodded and turned to his team, who stood ready. Eleanor Brooks, a tech specialist with a reputation for innovative solutions, and James Carter, a seasoned mechanic known for his ability to fix anything with minimal resources. They exchanged determined glances and headed towards the shuttle that would take them to the Thalaxian shipyard. Upon arrival, they were greeted by a cold, metallic landscape. The Anaxes 9, a massive Thalaxian warship, loomed above them, its damage more extensive than anticipated. Alien engineers watched them with barely concealed contempt. David wasted no time. "Eleanor, start scanning the core systems. James, we need to assess structural integrity and see what we can salvage." They got to work immediately, but the advanced Thalaxian technology proved daunting. Systems were far more complex and incompatible with their tools. As the hours ticked by, frustration grew among the team. Eleanor frowned at her tablet. "These systems are light years ahead of ours. We're not making any headway." James wiped sweat from his brow. "We need to think outside the box, David. We're not going to fix this using conventional methods." David nodded. "We integrate human tech with theirs. Create a hybrid solution." They began brainstorming, merging their understanding of human and Thalaxian technologies. Despite the mounting pressure and frequent setbacks, their innovative approach started to yield results. The hybrid interface they developed began to stabilize some of the ship's critical systems. Meanwhile, Threx monitored their progress, his skepticism slowly turning into curiosity. He approached David during a brief break. "Why do you persist, knowing the odds?" David looked at him, unwavering. "Because it's not about the odds. It's about proving what humanity is capable of." Threx said nothing, but a glimmer of respect appeared in his eyes. As the team continued their work, internal tensions arose. Stress and exhaustion led to heated arguments. David's leadership was put to the test, but he managed to keep the team united, reminding them of the bigger picture. Days turned into nights, but the team pushed forward. Their bond strengthened as they overcame each obstacle, their different skills complementing each other perfectly. They started seeing the fruits of their labor. Systems that had been dead sprang to life, and the ship's critical functions began to stabilize. Just as they were on the verge of a breakthrough, a Thalaxian engineer named Varn confronted them. "You humans have no place here. This is beyond you." Varn's animosity was clear, but David refused to back down. "We're here to help. If you have issues with that, take it up with the assembly." The confrontation was tense, but David's unwavering determination disarmed Varn's hostility. The team resumed their work, but the encounter left them on edge. As they approached the final stages of their repair plan, David discovered a massive fault hidden deep within the ship's core systems, clear evidence of sabotage. Realizing the magnitude of their task, David knew they had to work quickly and carefully to prevent a catastrophe. His mind raced with solutions, and with the support of his team, they devised a plan to bypass the damage and restore stability. The final moments were a blur of intense focus and rapid execution. David, Eleanor and James worked in perfect harmony, their combined expertise overcoming the last hurdles. With the final adjustment, the Annex's 9 roared back to life, its systems fully operational. David and his team stepped back, exhaustion etched on their faces, but triumph in their hearts. The Galactic Assembly, watching the proceedings, erupted in astonishment and applause. Even Threx could not hide his admiration. David Mitchell and his team moved with precision through the labyrinthine corridors of the Thalaxian shipyard. The Annex's 9, a colossal warship, stood as a testament to advanced alien engineering, yet its current state was a chaotic mess of damaged circuits and failing systems. Eleanor Brooks, eyes fixed on her tablet, began scanning the core systems while James Carter inspected the structural integrity of the hull. "Eleanor, what do you see?" David asked, his voice steady despite the immense pressure. She glanced up, her brow furrowed. "The main reactor is offline, and several key systems are on the verge of collapse. We're looking at a complete overhaul." James, running his hand along a twisted support beam, shook his head. "This is worse than we thought. The structural damage is extensive. We need to reinforce these areas before we can even think about bringing the systems online." David nodded, formulating a plan. "All right, let's get to work. Eleanor, focus on stabilizing the core systems. James, start with the structural reinforcements. I'll coordinate our efforts and liaise with the Thalaxian engineers." As they set to work, the scale of their task became increasingly apparent. The alien technology was unlike anything they had encountered before, and the integration with their tools was a monumental challenge. Yet, as hours turned into days, their persistence began to pay off. The hybrid interface they developed showed promise, stabilizing some of the ship's critical functions. David observed his team with pride. Eleanor's technical brilliance and James's mechanical prowess were invaluable. However, tensions simmered beneath the surface. The grueling work hours and constant setbacks strained their patience. One evening, while Eleanor was fine-tuning the hybrid interface, she let out a frustrated sigh. "This system doesn't respond to our inputs the way it should. We're missing something." James, equally weary, suggested, "Maybe it's the energy flow regulation. These aliens might use a different method." David intervened, placing a hand on Eleanor's shoulder. "Take a break, both of you. We need fresh eyes on this. I'll review the schematics again." As his team rested, David delved into the intricate designs of the Thalaxian systems. He noticed subtle patterns in their energy distribution that hinted at a different regulatory approach. The realization sparked a new idea. He gathered his team and shared his insights. "Eleanor, James, I think I've found the key to integrating our technology with theirs. We need to modify our energy regulators to match their flow patterns. It's risky, but it could work." Eleanor's eyes lit up with renewed determination. "Let's do it." They worked through the night, reconfiguring their systems. Their innovative approach began to yield results. The core systems showed signs of stabilization, and the ship's critical functions started to respond positively. However, not everyone was pleased with their progress. Engineer Varn, a Thalaxian with a deep-seated distrust of humans, confronted David as he reviewed their latest diagnostics. "You humans think you can solve everything with your crude technology," Varn sneered. "This ship is beyond your capabilities." David remained calm, meeting Varn's gaze. "We're here to help. If you have a better solution, let's hear it." Varn's expression hardened, but he said nothing. Instead, he stalked away, leaving David with a sense of unease. As the team pressed on, the threat of sabotage loomed over their efforts. Late one night, Eleanor discovered a critical fault in the core systems, evidence of deliberate tampering. She rushed to David, her face pale. "David, look at this. Someone's trying to sabotage our work." David examined the data, his mind racing. "We need to secure our progress and report this to the Thalaxian authorities. If we don't, all our efforts could be undone." They fortified their systems and alerted the Thalaxian overseers. The next day, Varn was brought before the assembly, his treachery exposed. The Thalaxian authorities, now fully aware of the humans' dedication and integrity, provided additional support. With renewed focus, the team tackled the final stages of the repair. David's quick thinking and innovative solutions guided them through the last hurdles. Eleanor's refined energy regulators worked flawlessly, and James's reinforced structures held strong. As the Annex's 9 systems roared back to life, the Galactic Assembly watched in astonishment. The once skeptical Thalaxians now looked upon the human team with newfound respect. David, Eleanor, and James stood together, their faces marked by exhaustion but glowing with pride. David Mitchell and his team, bolstered by their initial success, were ready to tackle the remaining issues on the Annex's 9. The ship's core systems were finally stable, but the challenges ahead were daunting. The vessel's propulsion systems were still offline, and its weapons arrays were non-functional. The Galactic Assembly had extended its tentative trust, but skepticism lingered. As they prepared for the next phase, Eleanor Brooks meticulously reviewed the data streams from the ship's mainframe. David, the propulsion matrix is completely fried. We're going to need to reroute the entire power grid to get it operational again. James Carter, examining the weaponry systems, added, and the weapons arrays are a mess. We'll need to rebuild the targeting systems from scratch. David, ever the optimist, nodded. All right, Eleanor, focus on the power grid. James, start on the weapons. I'll coordinate with the Thalaxians for additional resources. They divided their tasks, diving into the intricate web of alien technology. Eleanor's work required disassembling and reconfiguring the power conduits. As she worked, she encountered an unexpected problem. The energy regulators were designed to operate on a different frequency, incompatible with human technology. David, she called out, we've got a major issue. The regulators won't sync with our systems. We need a workaround, or this whole grid is useless. David joined her, scrutinizing the alien components. Let's modify the frequency converters. It's a long shot, but if we can adjust the harmonics, we might be able to bridge the gap. Together, they worked on recalibrating the converters, a painstaking process that required precision and patience. Hours slipped by, but their persistence paid off. The modified converters began to sync, and the power grids slowly came back online. Meanwhile, James faced his own set of challenges. The targeting systems for the weapons arrays were more sophisticated than anything he had seen. He had to strip down the arrays to their core components, and rebuild them using a combination of human and Thalaxian tech. Just as he made significant progress, Varn, the Thalaxian engineer who had previously sabotaged their work, appeared again. You humans are wasting time, Varn sneered. This ship needs more than your primitive tools. James, irritation bubbling beneath his calm exterior, responded. We're making progress. If you have any useful input, feel free to share. Otherwise, let us do our job. Varn's eyes narrowed, but he remained silent, retreating to observe from a distance. The tension was palpable, but David's team continued their work undeterred. As night fell, David and his team took a brief respite. They gathered in a small break area, sharing a rare moment of quiet. Eleanor's gaze was fixed on her tablet, her mind still racing with calculations. Do you think we can pull this off? James asked, breaking the silence. David leaned back, contemplating. We've come this far. We can't turn back now. The assembly is watching us. Failure isn't an option. Their conversation was interrupted by an alarm blaring through the shipyard. David sprang to his feet. What now? They rushed back to the main control room, where the Thalaxian overseer met them. There's been a breach in the ship's reactor. We need immediate assistance to prevent a meltdown. David's heart raced. Eleanor, get the reactor diagnostics. James, prepare the emergency kits. We need to stabilize that reactor now. They raced against time, navigating the ship's corridors to the reactor chamber. The heat was intense, and the core was unstable, emitting dangerous levels of radiation. Eleanor quickly accessed the reactor's control panel, her fingers flying over the controls. We've got a coolant leak, she shouted over the din. We need to seal it and reinitiate the cooling system. James, donning a protective suit, moved swiftly to the leak, applying a temporary seal. David worked alongside Eleanor, adjusting the reactor's output to prevent an overload. The seconds ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. Sweat poured down their faces as they fought to bring the reactor back under control. Finally, with a hiss and a shudder, the coolant system reactivated, and the reactor's temperature began to drop. They collapsed in relief, the immediate crisis averted. The Thalaxian overseer, who had been observing their efforts, stepped forward. "Your quick response saved us. We owe you a debt of gratitude." David nodded, exhausted but resolute. "We're here to help. Let's make sure this doesn't happen again." As they exited the reactor chamber, a sense of achievement and unity filled the air. The Annex's 9 was inching closer to full operational status, but the road ahead remained fraught with challenges. The team's bond grew stronger with each trial, their determination undiminished. David Mitchell and his team approached the final stages of their mission with renewed vigor. The Annex's 9 was almost operational, and the Galactic Assembly watched with a mixture of anticipation and skepticism. The main engines were the last major obstacle, and any failure now could spell disaster. Eleanor Brooks was deeply engrossed in recalibrating the power systems when David approached her. "Eleanor, how's it looking?" She glanced up, wiping a smudge of grease from her forehead. "We're almost there. The engines are ready to fire up, but we need to sync the ignition sequence with the new power grid. One mistake and we could fry the entire system." David nodded. "Let's get it right the first time. We can't afford any more setbacks." James Carter was stationed at the control panel, ready to initiate the ignition sequence. He looked over his shoulder, his expression serious. "All set here. Just say the word." David took a deep breath. "All right, everyone, this is it. Let's light her up." As James initiated the sequence, the ship's engines roared to life, filling the shipyard with a low hum. The ground vibrated beneath their feet as the power surged through the Annex's 9. Lights flickered on, and the control panels lit up, displaying a series of successful diagnostics. Eleanor's face broke into a triumphant smile. "We did it, David. The engines are stable." David felt a surge of relief. "Excellent work, everyone. Let's run a few more tests to ensure everything is holding steady." As they performed the final checks, a commotion erupted at the entrance of the shipyard. Varn, the Thalaxian engineer who had previously sabotaged their efforts, was being escorted in by security. His expression was one of defiance mixed with fear. David stepped forward, addressing the security team. "What's going on?" One of the guards replied. "Varn has been accused of further sabotage attempts. We found evidence linking him to a recent breach in the ship's security protocols." Varn struggled against his restraints. "You humans think you can just come in and take over? This ship belongs to the Thalaxians, and you have no right to meddle with our technology." David's eyes narrowed. "We're here to help, Varn. Your actions have endangered everyone. This isn't about ownership, it's about survival." The security team took Varn away, leaving the atmosphere tense but resolved. David turned back to his team. "Let's not let this distract us. We have a job to finish." With the engine stable, they moved on to the final system checks. Eleanor worked on the navigation controls, ensuring the ship could maneuver properly. James focused on the weapons arrays, making sure they were fully operational and integrated with the new targeting systems. Hours passed in a blur of activity. Finally, the ship was ready for a full-scale test. David contacted the Galactic Assembly, informing them of their progress. The Assembly members, including Ambassador Threx, gathered in the control room to witness the test. David stood before the Assembly, his voice steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to demonstrate the capabilities of the Annex's 9. If successful, this ship will be fully operational and ready to defend against any threats." Threx, his skepticism now replaced with cautious optimism, nodded. "Proceed, Engineer Mitchell." David gave the signal to James, who initiated the test sequence. The ship's systems hummed to life, and the Annex's 9 lifted off the ground, hovering steadily in the air. Eleanor monitored the readings, ensuring everything was within safe parameters. As the ship executed a series of maneuvers, the assembly watched in awe. The weapons arrays fired at simulated targets with pinpoint accuracy, and the engines responded flawlessly to every command. It was a sight to behold. David turned to the assembly, his voice filled with pride. The Anax's 9 is fully operational. We've done it! Threx stepped forward, extending his hand. David Mitchell, you and your team have achieved what we thought was impossible. The Thalaxians are in your debt. David shook his hand, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over him. It was a team effort, Ambassador. We couldn't have done it without the support of the Assembly and the dedication of my team. As the Assembly members dispersed, David, Eleanor, and James stood together, taking in the sight of the Anax's 9. They had overcome incredible odds, proving humanity's worth and capability in the process. Eleanor looked at David, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. So, what's next? David smiled back, feeling a sense of unity and purpose. We'll take it one step at a time, Eleanor. There's always more work to be done.